So right now I have something pretty boring. I'm going to up my resolution because I'm working on the head. Let's remesh. And I'm going to play with that idea. And this might lead me to something unique and kind of cool. Let's bring that out in the back. Bring this up, get that downward slope. I'm going to go ahead and pull this out a little bit more and exaggerate that. And now the beak looks like it needs to be a little bit more pronounced. Maybe it's just a little bit of tuning that needs to happen. All right. I'm going to go ahead and take my alpha off, which is going to give me something a little softer on the surface. This is great for muscle and then sort of working out a shape that I want to be sort of soft. And then I'll go in when I do my edge work, do a little bit more with that. So I'm almost literally sculpting out the skull right now, and it's because I really need to see the skull really well to pull that character. It takes, throughout the body, and I think it's because I do put so much focus on the head, and because that's the first place where I always look. But throughout the body, I can go through with sort of, this is a little bit more of a simpler area, and I think, you think about the major muscle groups that sit across the body as opposed to how many muscles are in a face. You have about just as many muscles in your face as you do across the rest of your body, as far as like major muscle groups. If you really go through it. But I'm exaggerating a little bit, but you have a lot of muscles in there, so it's very complex. So I like going with a more detailed concept of the skull, rather than just a couple lines here and a couple lines there. I really liked sort of the armor plating around the eye, the orbital cavity, and the eagle skull. It's really cool. So I'll pull out that orbital cavity. And I'm sure it has another name. I'm just relating it back to human anatomy. That's my area of most familiarity. I mean, I've gone through and I've done a lot of different fantasy animal skulls. I do a lot of reptilians, but my jumping off point was human anatomy, as I believe is for most artists. So let's take another look. What do we have going on in the back? We sort of have a dome in the back, or at least that's what I'm seeing. So I'm going to build up a nice big dome there. And start playing with this and pushing things around. One guy that that's been around for a long time that I really like, that really flexes his creative muscles. If you guys have never checked out Wayne Barlow's work, you should check out Wayne Barlow. Legendary Wayne Barlow. He's definitely an inspiration of mine. All right, now I'm just looking at lines, right? So I see a nice line flowing here. Let's remesh. And you know what? I think I want to build up on this. There's something a little Angel of Death, Hellboy-like in there that I like. Yeah, and it's kind of how I think too. I always think in terms of like reference. I'm very much like a media junkie, art junkie. And I'm like, this kind of reminds me of that, and that kind of reminds me of this. And sometimes that's a good thing, and other times it's a horrible thing, because I'm like, gosh darn it, I just sculpted out Hellboy. When I was working on something else, my subconscious just pushed me there. Like, okay, so I'm not going that direction. All right, I got something kind of weird going on here, but I like it. All right, I think that's a decent start there. Let's see, moving from here, I'm going to go into the neck. So I'm going to run with a neck this long. I think it might be wise for me to look up a secretary bird's neck. Secretary birds kind of have something similar going on. I'll be lucky if I can find muscles from a secretary bird. So it's sort of the same thing. Huh, they have a giraffe in there, but let's see if they actually show the neck of the secretary bird, or at least if I can draw some conclusions. Anatomals, that's great. I swear I would have so much trouble making art if it were not for Google. I rely on it way too much. But it's so hard not to. I mean, it's it's part of the the perks of living in the modern age is that you do have the internet. You do have the ease of being able to go, oh, you know what? I want to start learning how to do nuclear physics in the next year. Start researching that online, and then you get put on some list. But it's great that we can go through and access so much information. What do we have here? It does not look necessarily like a secretary bird, but I can pick up some cues from this. Beautiful. That actually looks like maybe a little bit like a cassowary, but I don't think it is a cassowary. Cassowary, you guys ever heard of cassowary? World's most dangerous bird? Looks like a prehistoric. Here's a cassowary for those folks that who haven't seen a cassowary. There's plenty of YouTube videos of showing cassowary attacks. They look like a dinosaur. They're absolutely beautiful and totally prehistoric looking, and they are super vicious. But these are like I think I've done like 6 cassowary sculpts. I was definitely fascinated with this bird for a long time. But all right, so let's go back to here, and I'm looking at this tube-like structure, right? So I'm looking at, because at first I was thinking like giraffe anatomy, where there's all this sort of weaving of muscle through the neck, and this is very different from what I'm seeing. We have a little bit along the back here from the skull, down and through here. So I'm going to pick up on that, and I'm going to kind of tie that with what I know. I'm not going to mimic that exactly. So let's start dropping in some muscle now. Okay, yeah, I'll bring up some of this in my cassowary studies. You know, it's funny. I was going to post them on when I was over at Pixel. I was going to post them on ZBrush Central, and I can't remember who it was. It's during a beta. Posted up Cassowary, and I'm like, oh, I don't want to seem like a biter. It's so bad. It's so bad to even admit that because it's such a bad practice for artists. You know, you see another artist do the same thing you're doing, and you're like, okay, well, I'm not going to post mine because you know they're doing the same thing, and that's the awful thing to do. It's horrible. You should always post your work, no matter if you know there's 10,000 you know Hellboys or 10,000 you know dragons out there. They're not your dragon. Right? They're not your cassowary. But I was a little bit more reticent to post at that time, I would say. Maybe I'll post my favorite cassowary study because they're not all great. I kind of like the tension that I'm getting out of this, and a lot of this is going to be hidden in feather, but I think I'm going to let a lot of it, well, a good portion of it shine through. All right, so this is interesting. So we have a tapering, and I'm going to correlate that to the trapezoids, maybe? No? Well, it's kind of moving into the breast there, but I'm going to go ahead and say that we have something like traps here. Don't want that bulging out and breaking the silhouette so much. Here we go. All right, going down into the chest, I kind of started with a normal rib cage, and I'm going to hybridize it now. So if we go look at, how many of you guys have dissected a chicken or a turkey just to learn about muscles? It's a great practice. I recommend that you do it sometime. But let's look at bird rib cage. No, not bird cage made out of ribs. Let's go bird skeleton. We'll pull it up. So if we look at, here's a good example. All right, if we look at this skeleton, there's this large bone right here, and honestly, I can't even tell you the name of it right now. I'm sure I can look it up right now. What is it? It is called the keel, which makes sense. It's like a keel on a boat. I'm going to go ahead and drop that keel in, and the reason why the keel is there is because you need a lot of muscles to continuously flap wings to fly. Right? So there has to be some powerhouse in here to help with that. So I'm going to reconcile the keel in the bottom of this rib cage to assist in flight with the wings.